Thank you so much. It's truly an honor to be here. You know, you come to dinner sometimes and you have the opportunity to see the works of so many wonderful people. In particular, we have here Rabbi Moskowitz, we have here an individual, Alan Rosenstock, whose whole lives are built around giving to Klal Yisrael. It humbles you and it inspires you. So it's a schus to be here. Thank you for the opportunity. And I want to share with you just a few ideas about, at least what, as I'm hearing this, what Tomche Shabbos means to me, and I think what it means to all of us. But I want to start with a story. I want to tell you how I got my first job. Some of you may have heard this before. I'm sorry if you have. This is what's on top of my mind. So, as many of you may or may not know, I'm not a rabbi. I'm a lawyer, or said better, I'm a recovering attorney. And I went to school in the city, Columbia University. And the way it works in Columbia is that at the end of your first year, you get your grades. In the beginning of your second year, you try to get your job. So they're not going to have all the students run to all the law firms. That's going to be crazy. They're not going to have all the law firms come to the school that's not coveted. So what they do is they take all the students and all the law firms, and they meet them together in a hotel in the city, the DoubleTree, in the middle of Times Square, and it's 3 days of binge interviewing. And it's a whole game theory as to what you should be going for. You can't go too high, you won't get a job. Can't go too low, you sell yourself too short. Where and how? I'll never forget, there was one firm I wanted to work for called Davis, Polk & Wardwell. There's something about wasps that I love so much. I don't know, they have numbers after their name. They've got mahogany walls, whatever it is. I wanted to work in the waspiest law firm. And these guys were well above my grades. So I didn't put them down. And I go to this 3-day thing, and it was back in those days, crazy. There were crazy correlations in the world, like you went to school and you got a job. Those two things got put together. It was weird. So everybody got interviews. They went to school. They got jobs. So first day, everyone's getting interviews. But I'm a Jew. You know, if it says 3 days, you stay 3 full days. That's how I was raised. If it's free, you take 2. I don't know how it works. I don't know if they're giving out tote bags or bagels. Whatever it was, I'll stay in 3 days. 3 days come in. Everyone's got jobs. It's me, a room this size, and like 4 firm guys and a huge board behind. And on the board at every single interview. And it kept on saying, like, as it was going, it would say, like, taken, then, like, available. As the people were dropping their interviews, it was becoming available. And I'm sitting there, and I noticed the last slot of the day was Davis, Polk & Wardwell. And I'm watching, and all of a sudden it says, available. And I go, should I do it? Should I not? Should I do it? I mean, I'm never going to get it, but it's here. I'm never going to get it. But, like, I might as well take a chance. Should I? Shouldn't I? Should I? I'm like, I'm going for it. I go up to the lady. I give her my name. She says, sit down, let you know if you get it. 2 seconds later, the board says, Davis, Polk & Wardwell, Charles Harari. I said, okay, here goes nothing. I go upstairs, and I walk into the interview room, and I see what is going to be probably the worst interview of my entire life. The partner they send to the 5:30 slot was a brand new partner that they just brought in from China. He speaks no English. I speak no Chinese. It's going to make for a great interview. I'll tell you a funny story. I got a neighbor across the street. It's an American guy. He is a laid-back American guy. He married a hot-blooded Israeli woman. He speaks no Hebrew. She speaks no English. Don't understand what your wife says. That's marital bliss to the end. He's outside in the morning, cup of coffee, enjoying the day. She is screaming words. I didn't even know Hebrew. He looks at me and goes, you're Orthodox. What does she mean? I'm like, you should go inside right now. Like, right now. Like, right, I'll hold your coffee. Go inside. So I walk in, he looks at me and goes, what's your name? I'm thinking, I don't know what he said, but I feel like I want to order something right now. He goes, what's your name? I'm like, can you just repeat the question one more time? He goes, name. I'm like, okay, slow it down for me. He goes, name. I'm like, oh, name. I totally know this answer. Charles Harari. Then he asks me, why do you want to be a lawyer? I only heard, do you want to be a lawyer? Why do you want to be a lawyer? Yes. And he's looking at me like, I'm like, I don't know, what, yay, contracts, go juries, what happens next? So at this point, he decides that I'm a complete moron, and he's not talking to me. But you got to give the student like 25 minutes. So he puts his head down, and for 20 minutes, is silent. You know how long 20 minutes of silence is? I do. It's not fun. 20 minutes later, he looks up at me and goes, Talmud? I'm thinking, he didn't say Talmud, that's for sure. I'm like, what rhymes with Talmud? I'm like, Talmud, Balmud, Kalmud, Lamud. I'm like, did you say Talmud? He goes, you know Talmud? Now I'm thinking, I don't know where he is going, but I like it. I said, yes. You know, like when you go to yeshiva for like, you know, you got to fill your gap years. If you study Gemara for more than 10 seconds, like you become like an advanced Talmudic master. You know what I'm talking about? Every yeshiva guy's got a PhD in Talmud. So he goes, you know Talmud? I'm like, yeah. He goes, I just got in from China. I'm like, I can tell. He said, my first week at the firm, they brought me to meet all the partners. And I walked into one of the top tax partners in the country. He was a Jewish man. And behind him was this beautiful mahogany desk with a bookshelf with all the tax codes. And in the corner was a different color binding. And I asked the Jewish man, excuse me, sir, what is that? And the Jewish man said to me, that's a Talmud. If you think the tax codes are hard, this is 10 times harder. He looks at me and goes, you must be a genius. And I'm like, well, I don't like to brag about it. I mean, I have been studying the Talmud since I was in the 5th grade. He goes, oh, it is an honor to meet you. I said, it is an honor you met me as well. So I walked out of the interview. I'm looking up at Shemaim. I don't know if there's a birthday party in heaven. I don't know what's happening, but Hashem's having fun. And crazy stuff happened back then. I remember going to a wall. There was a phone attached to a wall. I don't know why. I put money in a wall back then. And I called my wife. My wife said to me, Charlie, the craziest thing happened. Davis Polk called like 15 times for you. And I said, I know, it's Hashem's having some fun. Maybe I can use it in a speech. Don't worry. When I get to Davis Polk, they're going to realize that I'm not Davis Polk material. Meanwhile, Hashem's like, I am just getting started with you, Charlie. So I go back to the firms. The way it works here in the firms, anyone who's ever interviewed for a law firm, you know how it works. You go in there and you say the things you want to say. You interview, go, yeah, no, of course, I'd love to work all day. Why? But I want to see daylight before I'm 50 years old. No, of course, yes. Contracts are my life. Words. Yeah, no, I don't want a family. Yes. And they're like, you're just like us. I'm like, I hope not. And they're like, this is great. It's going better and better and better. And then they take you out to lunch. You know, at lunch, they get to know who you really are. So I go out to a restaurant in the city called Prime Grill. It's with a woman about my age and a man, a good 8 years, 7, maybe 10 years older than me. She's talking. It's going great. He doesn't say one word. He like barks his orders at the waitress and she runs to get it. He's intimidating just looking at him. Tall. Halfway through the main, it's like, you know, how much small talk can you make? And it's like uncomfortable silence. And he turns to me and goes, so, I see you're a Jew. And I'm like, oh, okay. Gravy train is at the station. This is over. I'm like, what gave it away? The cloth on my head? I'm clearly not the Pope. So he says, well, it's an honor to know you. I said, okay. He goes, you know, before I became a lawyer, I was a U.S. Marine. And us Marines respect nobody except for the Israeli commandos. And I'm thinking, he thinks I'm an Israeli commando? I'm like, that's right, Sergeant. Alpha, Beta, Delta, Charlie. I was rappelling off the Mediterranean with my Talmud in one hand. The chicken died on the way and I killed it. You couldn't see it because that's how they train us. So at this point I realized I'm getting the job because the Kadosh Baruch Hu wants me to have the job and you can't mess with Hashem. And my first job was with Davis Polk and Wardwell. So I put my feet on the chair. I ordered the creme brulee and I said, now I'm doing the interviewing. I said, excuse me, Mr. U.S. Marine. Where do you get off telling me there's anyone in the world you respect but the U.S. Marines? So he says to me the following. He goes, you know, I bleed red, white, and blue. My grandfather served this country. My father and uncle served this country. All my brothers came out and served this country. When I came out of high school, there was always only one place I was going, and that was to the service. And I got to the service, and I went to the Corps, the Marine Corps, and I wasn't a good Marine. I was a great Marine. But something was bothering me on the inside. I didn't know who I was. I didn't know what I was fighting for. I believed in freedom and justice and liberty, but God blessed this country with freedom and justice and liberty. By the way, this is before 9/11. Remember the good days before 9/11? Remember those days? Before 9/11, we did like crazy stuff, like go to all the airplanes with shoes on. Remember those days? We made a cup of coffee and we actually took it to the air. We were partying before 9/11. Remember before 9/11, America and how impenetrable we were? I was on the trains before 9/11. I was in Columbia. It was that time. I was on the 1-9 going up to school at night, Tuesday morning at 9 o'clock when the first tower hit. And the first guys that got hit before the second tower hit jumped on my 1-9. We picked it up on 59th and Columbus. They got it on the downtown, and they were sitting on a packed car. And they were schwitzy and they're muddy. And everyone said, what's going on? And they had the whole forum. And they go, well, some crazy guy made a left turn and ended up in the Twin Towers. And my friend next to me with a yarmulke on his head said, you think it's terrorism? And this guy in front of a packed train of New Yorkers said, terrorism? You Jews are so obsessed with terrorism. This isn't the Gaza Strip. This is New York City. It's not terrorism. Remember the good old days? I was a U.S. Marine, he said, and I was fighting for what? Was I a peacekeeper in Bosnia? I didn't know who I was. I didn't know what I was fighting for. And then they picked me to be part of a special training with the Israeli commandos. And they sent me to Israel for 10 days, and we did exercise. And at the end of the 10 days, they walked me on top of a hill called Masada. And the commander sat us in a semicircle and said, you know why we're on this hill for? Because a long time ago, we had a temple that we used to use to worship our God, and the Romans showed up, and they destroyed it, and a bunch of Jews left. And you know what they wanted? Was just to practice on their own, but the Romans wouldn't have it. They chased them to this mountaintop. They circled the mountain, and they waited until they could finally go up on top. And when they got on top, the Jews looked to the left, and they looked to the right, and no nation would come and help them, so they killed themselves. We're sitting here today, he told the soldiers, because Masada doesn't fall again. We're done asking you guys for help. We'll take care of ourselves. We'll protect ourselves. We come out of the ashes of the Holocaust, we're not going back. And he goes, you know, I always wondered about you people. Don't you love when they start like that? I've been sitting in military school. I go to all these defense classes. I go to these tactic classes, and they're telling me stories about the Six-Day War. And I'm asking myself, where do the Jews have you guys just showed up on the scene 5 minutes ago. Why are we learning? And I got it. Because you know who you are. You're the people that started from a land, and you're going back to the land, and you're never getting stopped. And you know what you're fighting for. You're not fighting for an ideal. If you lose a border, you lose a country. You're fighting for your mother's backyard. And if you know who you are, and you know what you're fighting for, you can accomplish anything. You know, I got to tell you honestly, a day doesn't go by in my life where I don't at some point in the morning hear that voice. If you know who you are, and you know what you're fighting for, you can accomplish anything. You ever get that feeling sometimes, like we're going and going and coming and coming and going and going, and I don't know how much more I can fit into my day because there isn't another second in my day, and yet with everything that I'm doing, I come to Shabbos. How many times do you feel that you're crawling to Shabbos? You're not walking to Shabbos. And you look around to the world and go, how do you survive without Shabbos? I don't have a second. And with all of that, we feel like we're not enough. It's not more. It's deeper. It's who are we? And what are we fighting for? So this week's parshas, I believe, clarify it crystal clear who we are. Banias Daite. So let's talk a little bit about it. Because this week's parsha, you talk about greatness. We are blessed as a nation, and we have to appreciate it. Our history is filled with the greatest of the greats. Our DNA is lined with individuals that were the greatest people to walk this face of the earth. Prophets, prophetesses, kings, queens, people that stood on mountaintops. We have an enormous history, but if you would take every single human being and say, who would be, if you will, the greatest? Who would rise to the top? Easy. Moshe Rabbeinu. This week, this is the zone. This is Moshe Rabbeinu's zone. What makes Moshe so great? So Panemius, we can talk forever. Let's stay pashtus for tonight. Just on the surface, on the daf. What makes Moshe so great? I don't know, you look at his resume, not so perfect. His father was the bad guy. Didn't speak Hebrew, didn't go to yeshiva. He was a convicted felon. I'm telling you, if you tried to get in yeshiva today, we'd be like, I don't think so. If someone would read him to marry one of our daughters, we'd be like, it's nice. I don't think so. Not for my family, not for my kids. Kodesh Baruch Hu had a lot of people to choose from. The entire Shevet Levi was sitting and learning all day. The Kodesh Baruch Hu could have picked anybody to be his one. Why Moshe? So before we delve into Moshe, I want to take a step back. Because it's hard to understand Moshe until you can understand where Moshe started from. And according to the Arizal, the Zohar and the Arizal have a little machlokas. According to the Arizal, Moshe actually was Act 2. Moshe Neshama came down first in another body. Whose body was that? Noach. Now to understand Moshe, we have to understand Noach. And if we get Noach and Moshe, hopefully we'll get Tomche Shabbos. Noach's a great story, right? You can't get a better, the intro was great, I appreciate it. You can't get better than the Rebbeinu Shalom. Eila told us Noach. Noach ish tzaddik. Kodesh Baruch Hu says he's the guy. He's a tzaddik. Tamim hayab b'derosov. He is, to get tzaddik and tamim from the Rebbeinu Shalom on the dot, unbelievable. But it seems like there's like another story going on, don't you think? Rashi goes, I don't know. B'derosov? Yesh ma'aber sinu shedarshim shel shvach. Now some people agree with the Rebbeinu Shalom. Some people say differently. Had he been born in Avram's generation, this is Rashi, this isn't Charlie Harari, this is Rashi. Lo haya nichshav, he wouldn't have been considered klum. The Navi, you know what you call the floodwaters in the Navi? Mei Noach. The Gemara, Mektane Amuna haya. The Zohar in Parashas Noach says, the reason why it's called Mei Noach is to show culpability on Noach for the waters. I don't see what's going on. What's the story of Noach? Is he or isn't he? Remember the story of Noah? Noah's a great story, right? The Kodesh Baruch Hu wants to wipe out the world, so he brings a flood. And he tells Noah, I want you to build a teva. How long does it take him? 120 years. That's what happens when you give a Jew something to build. Had Noah been Italian, it would have happened over the weekend with granite countertops in the kitchen. How do you know that God has a sense of humor? Easy. We have a holiday called Sukkot where we have to build things. What can be funnier than us pretending like we can build something? We know a guy, we're never the guy. I'll never forget when I moved. I live in Long Island. I'll never forget when I bought my house the first time. The first thing I did, I bought my house and I said, I'm a man, I have a house, I'm building a sukkah. I'm the guy, by the way, that when I change a light bulb, I bring my wife and I go, honey, why don't you go to you see that the lights are off, it's dark? Why don't you go to the light switch? Flick it on. She's like, oh, it's on. I'm like, you see that? I did that. You married well. She's like, I don't think I did. I go outside, I go, I'm building a sukkah. So what do? You know how you know that we can't build? Because every year, look in the papers every year for sukkahs. Every year. It's like, do less work. First is like, only hammers. No hammers, no nails. Don't even get your hands dirty. Throw the sukkah up and we magically figure a way for it to come down and fit in your backyard. So I go to the backyard. I go to the store, I buy the biggest Lego set I can find. I put it in my backyard, I work on it, I'm done. I said, you know what, I built my sukkah. I call how many problems is you have metal on top? I can't put the slach on the metal. So I call my dad, I go, Dad, I need to buy some wood. So he goes, wood? Sure. Why don't you go to Home Depot? I said, what's Home Depot? And he said to me, you are no longer my son, you are now my daughter. So you ever been to Home Depot for the first time? All of the guys like me, the non-handy guys. My father is really handy. So I go to Home Depot for the first time. Anyone remember what that's like? You go in there and it's like overwhelming. And I go to the first man that I can find in orange. And I go, excuse me, fine sir, wise man. I'm here to buy wood. And he goes, what size? And I said, oh, size? Medium? So you know when you're weird and you can't get weirder? You know what I'm talking about? You ever get busted saying Asher Yatzar outside the bathroom at work? You ever have that? When you walk outside and you're with your colleague and he goes, what'd you just do? You're like, nothing. You're like, you did something. You're like, no. You whispered something outside the bathroom. What'd you whisper? I'm like, I didn't whisper anything to anybody. He's like, can you tell me? I'm like, I gave a blessing to God for the bathroom. He's like, can you get weirder? I'm like, apparently I can. Someone give me tefillin in an airport so I can feel completely weird. You ever get that feeling? So I said, you know what, you can't get weirder. I asked for wood, I don't know the size. So I said to him the weirdest thing that I've ever said to anyone in the world. I'm like, I need wood because I'm trying to build a hut in my backyard. So he goes, oh, a hut, sure. Aisle 4. I'm like, aisle 4? I go to aisle 4, I kid you not. There's 5 frum Jews around one guy in orange going 2x2, 2x4, 2x6, 2x8. And the frum guy's like, if I buy 4, is the 5th one for free on the first purchase? Is the swipe 50% on the first swipe or the second swipe? Don't you love our people? Kodesh Baruch Hu doesn't want to kill people. He gives the Jew the boat to build, and 120 years later he gets on the boat. And Noach gets on the boat after 120 years. You know what he does? He makes it. He lives in the community where nobody's from. He holds on to his Torah and his ideals. He lives in a sea of immorality, and his kids are still from. No yeshiva day school, his kids are still from. They marry good people. He has Shabbos meals. They're learning before. They're learning afterwards. Everything is. He locks the boat. He goes off on his way, and he wins. He survived. Nobody got lost in the flood. Check, 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 check. Every check. Ibishas is taught every halach. What's the problem with Noach? He's a tzaddik. This is a great, 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 great man named the Kedushas Levi, or Levi Yitzchak from Berditchev. And the Kedushas Levi says, you know Noach's problem? You can't say no. I can't say Noach's problem. It's inappropriate to say those two words. In our humble way of trying to learn from Torah. He says, Noach miktane emunah. What does that mean? Because there's 2 ways to have understanding what it means miktane emunah. We think emunah is in believing in the Rabbon Shalom on top. We forget that the Rabbon Shalom doesn't just exist on top. You know where the Ribono Shel Olam exists? Inside. Each of us are built with the DNA called the Ribono Shel Olam. Achelek Elokah Mimal, and for those that learn Tanya, Mamish. Each of us have the Ribono Shel Olam inside us. He's not far from us. Noach never davened for his door. Noach got on a boat and not one guy came. 120 years, not one guy came with you. Not the neighbor, not the guy in the corner, nobody, not one person. 120 years, how is that possible? I bet you Noach was out there trying to talk, but in your core, did you believe that that person was an idiot? That person doesn't want to be evil? If you don't have a mona in the yid, the Ribono Shel Olam inside a person, then words won't penetrate. Did you daven for somebody else? So he gets on the boat and he floats to safety, and everybody underneath the page says, whoa, 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 whoa. The Zayir itself says, whoa, whoa, not so pashut, may Noach. Because it's good. It's good to take care of yourself and to be the yid the Eibishter wants you to be, but it's not good enough. So he comes back, as who? As Moshe Rabbeinu. Now watch, it's so amazing how the Kadosh Baruch Hu picks certain stories to introduce us to Moshe Rabbeinu. Vayehi bayamim ahem, the pasuk opens up. Vayigdal Moshe, and Moshe grows up, and Rashi, so in tune to Torah, says, wait a second. Last pasuk it said Vayigdal hayeled. What are you, two Vayigdals? He goes, no. Last time it was he grew up in size. Now he grew up in stature. We forget because we don't. Then now Egypt's a third world country, but there was a time where Egypt was the center of the universe. Right now America is the center. For whatever reason, we're the center of the world. Right? You go into Europe, everybody knows our politics. We could probably not even name European countries. If it wasn't for the live map on the El Al flights, we wouldn't even know there was even a Europe. You know what I'm talking about? You're like, oh, that's where Spain is. I had no idea. The center of the world, for whatever it is. You ever go someplace and they don't speak English and you're confused? You're like, well, English. And they're like, no, this is a town in Israel. We don't speak English. You're like, you don't speak English? The center of the universe was Egypt, thanks to our forefathers, Yosef. They figured out a way to keep everybody with enough food. The center of the world was Egypt. Moshe Rabbeinu was sitting in the palace of the most powerful man at the time. He was a viceroy. He should have had a packed schedule. Morning, camel riding and Nile surfing. He could have went to an event at night to give money to the suffrage of the Jewish people. How they could have moved chairs to see what it was like to be in slavery. He could have had a packed schedule with 4 personal assistants. I had a friend of mine that made partner, and David spoke. It took him a month after he made partner. He had to pick out his couches, and then he can't wear that clothes anymore. He needs an expensive car. He got a new car, and he got a party. A month. Moshe Rabbeinu's first day on the job. What does he do? Vayetze elecha. And the Medrash says, what did he do? He used to go out and eat the Egyptians. People that hate us really hate us. They don't just hate us a little bit. So the Egyptians didn't just work us. What they would do is they give us jobs that are inappropriate for us. They'd have a man do a woman's job, a woman do a man's job, an old person do a young person's job. They would, if you needed to mail a letter, they would give it to the young guy, and they would ask his grandfather to carry a bag of bricks, and the young guy would go, we're going to the same place, let me carry it for my grandfather. But they wanted to get into our heads. And Moshe Rabbeinu, on his first day of the job of being the most chashuv guy in the world, walked in with his VIP pass into the camps. And he said, no. And he would fix people around to give them at least a little bit of respect. And he would cry with them. And then one day he shows up and he sees an Egyptian hitting a Jew. And he goes, you touch him again, I'm going to kill you. And the Egyptian goes, really? Oh, come on. We get it. You're a big liberal. You love everybody. It's so beautiful, Moshe. Wonderful. You're going to win Time Man of the Year. We're all inspired. Do me a favor. Jewish blood's cheap. Didn't you get the memo? And he goes, you touch him again, I'm going to kill you. He goes, really? You could be an ambassador to Canaan one day. You have a future. You're going to give it up for this? He goes, you touch him again, I'm going to kill you. Egyptian goes, nah, I don't think so. You know the story. He touches him, and Moshe's life starts to spiral downward. He runs for his life. He ends up in Midian, and in Midian he just shows up out of nowhere. There are women shepherds, and these male shepherds are harassing the ladies. He goes, you're harassing the ladies? And they go, who are you? He goes, who cares? You're really coming and harassing the women? They go, who made you mayor? He goes, I don't have to be mayor. Not on my watch. And one of the women happened to have been the daughter of a man named Yisro. Remember the story? And next thing you know, Moshe Rabbeinu was married to one of the daughters of Yisro, and he's now in charge of Yisro's wealth. Back in those days, wealth was not in the stock market, it was in the sheep. And the pasuk and the story turns, and this is the moment. This is where it all comes down to one moment. Moshe is shepherding the flock. It's not easy to shepherd a flock. I grew up in Canarsie, Brooklyn. Let me tell you, it's tough work. And back in those days, that's where your wealth was. And as he's walking, this is a medrash in Shemos Rabbah, look it up. It's unbelievable. This actually is a medrash. And he's walking, he's shepherding the flock. And as he's walking with the flock, one of the little sheep, the shepsel, runs off. And Moshe, can you imagine what it must be like? You have a whole flock here, one leak goes, what do? So you can't let one go. You can't leave it here. He goes, I'm going after the sheep. And the sheep is running, and he's running, and the sheep is running, and he's running, and the sheep is going, and he's going. You can only imagine. It's sweltering hot out there. And what you probably do is, if you have to extrapolate, it probably goes to the back of the sheep. When it runs out and it hits him, you should be hitting the sheep in the back of the head so it instinctively knows, if I want to make a left turn and my buddies are making a right, I'm going to go right. Thank you very much. And Moshe's running, and he's running, and Moshe's running, and he's running, and then Moshe comes running up to the sheep, and he sees that the sheep has his head down in a little pool of water. And he's licking the water. And this is the time where the shepherd pulls out his stick. But not Moshe Rabbeinu. Moshe Rabbeinu sees the sheep licking the pond, and he gets down on a knee, and he looks at the sheep, and he says, "You were thirsty? I had no idea. Now you must be tired." And he takes the sheep, and he puts it on his back. And he walks the sheep back to the flock, and the Rebbeinu Shalom goes, "Are you kidding me?" In Hebrew or Aramaic. He didn't say it in that language. "Are you kidding me? I get it, you're people. I understand. Women, I get it. For a sheep, is there anything you put before you? Chayecha," the Abishah says, "you're going to watch my sheep." Because there's nothing that Rebbeinu Shalom loves more than an individual who cares about you before me. There's nothing that God loves more than a person standing up and saying, "There's a kid behind the door." They're not chashuv. We don't see them. They're hidden. They don't make it to the highlights because they don't have enough money, but it's not their fault. They're people like we're people. They don't eat. And you don't know they exist. He's a kid behind the door. We got to take care of the kid behind the door. There's nothing that Rebbeinu Shalom is more than when you take care of the sheep. Nobody's looking, but somebody's looking. So watch what happens next. This is great. Nobody can make this up. Kadosh Baruch Hu, Moshe comes down and he's just a man. Becomes the leader, goes toe-to-toe with Paro, 10 rounds, walks Klal Yisrael out of the Yam Suf, stands in front of Matan Torah, gets the Torah for Klal Yisrael. What could be bigger for Moshe? He tells the Klal Yisrael, "Do me a favor. I'll be back in a couple of days, okay? You guys okay?" They go, "We're good." He goes up. Remember the story? Here's how I picture the story. 40 days later, all the Ashkenazi Jews are standing by the end of the mountain going, "Where is he? He's late." All the Litvish Jews, "He's late, he's late, he's late, he's late." Moshe's Sephardi. They forgot to tell him. When you're Sephardi, if you're there on the same day, you're considered to be like you're on time. Sephardim and Hasidim have the same feeling towards time. Generally, we accept it. I come from an interesting background. I'm half Sephardi. I'm half, my father's family comes from Aleppo, Syria. My mother's family comes from Munkach, which makes me a walking United Nations with better resolutions. Everything I eat either has rice in it or margarine. That's my life. I am never. Getting on time for me is like I can learn Shas twice before I get on time once. It's every part of my bone says, "Relax." Moshe comes down. This is how I picture it. He goes, "Where's everyone? Where's everybody?" They go, "Well, you were late. You were late." He goes, "Guys, I don't know. There was traffic on the belt. What are you kidding me? I was in heaven." We didn't know you were. We knew you were. He goes, "Guys, I'm starting. What are you doing? You guys are worshiping idols? Can you imagine Moshe Rabbeinu?" And he breaks the luchos. He goes up to Shemayim. Now watch this. You can't get better than this. He comes back up to Shemayim, and the Kadosh Baruch Hu says, "Hey, Moshe. Oh man, those people. You can't live with them, you know. Those don't. I got a deal for you, Moshe. Tell me if this sounds familiar to anybody in a different goof. Why don't we wipe them out and start again?" This sounds familiar? This is the Noach deal. Hey, nah. Me and you, we sail off to the sunset. What do you say? We sail off to the sunset. You get to pick a few people. We'll start a whole new nation. What do we need them for? They're not good enough to take with us. What does Moshe say? If you're going to mess with these people, Mecheni no misifrecha. Rav Tzadok says, if you take the words Mecheni, you know what they spell? May Noach. The moment where Moshe was metaking the miss of Noach was when God, can you imagine this? When God presented them the exact same deal. And Moshe says, you don't get it. You don't get it. You don't know who I am. I don't have a me without my people. There is no separate identity called me. There's just us. Klal Yisrael doesn't have separate individuals. There isn't people that we look to and go, you're separate from me. The separateness we have from each other is an illusion called this world. The whole game of being here is just so that we can look to each other and go, wait. We're not separate. We may look separate. We're one people. We're one neshama. I can't go further without you. I live for you. I die for you. We're one people together. Who are we? So let me tell you who named us, who called it better than anyone in the world. And just to quote who said it just a minute ago, Bas Paro, she quoted it perfectly. Remember the Maisa? Moshe goes into the Teva, he goes off. What happens? The Pasuk says, Vatiftach, she opens the basket. Vatireu es hayeled, she sees the yeled. Vihine hanar bocha, and the nar is crying. Vatoymar, and she says, Hine meyalde ha'ivrim zeh. So everyone comments on the whole yeled nar thing. But I heard a beautiful vart that I want to share, based on a Balaturim. Everybody, who's the yeled and who's the nar? And how does she understand that he's a Jew? So I heard a great vart. The yeled is actually Moshe Rabbeinu. The nar is not Moshe Rabbeinu. You know who the nar is? Aaron HaKohen. The Balaturim says, Hinei anar bocha is zeh Aaron HaKohen. The Balaturim. How does she put two and two together? And here's the vart. She sees a yeled. You know what Moshe's doing? He's probably enjoying himself. It was a gorgeous day on the Nile. I don't know. He was on a raft. Probably, I don't know. He's enjoying the day. But she looked up and she saw that a little boy was crying over this little boy. She said, you're crying over you? You're crying over the pain of somebody else? Hine meyalde ivrim zeh. That's a yid. You know what it means to be a yid? It means we cry for each other. That's who we are. We're the people that cry for each other. We're the people that die for each other. We're the people that can't go to a simcha if there's somebody out there that can't have a simcha. We're the people like this organization. Like this organization, we're the people that say, more. I was writing notes as Alan was talking. It's not enough. I'm like scribbling. It's not enough. It's not enough. It's not enough. It's enough. You did enough. Go home. No, it's not enough. It's not enough. I need more help. It's not enough. It's not. Why isn't it enough? You give a service to Klal Yisrael. You don't think it's enough to do Tomche Shabbos? It's not enough to give people food? No, because if you cry for a yid, it's not enough. And you see that the kids need help, it's not enough. And if I can reach deeper into my pocket and pull out one more quarter, it's not enough. And someone needs a job, it's not enough. It's not enough. If there's somebody in our kahila that doesn't have money, until we go, it's never enough. If someone's crying tonight, it's not enough. And if I got nothing in my pockets, it's not enough. Because it's never enough until we all win together. That's who we are. That's what we're fighting for. We're fighting to live in a world of the physical universe and never to forget that behind one little veil of physical, we're all one. We're fighting to be in a place where the Kodesh Baruch Hu gives some people more than others and to have the ability to say, he only gave me more so that I can give it to somebody else. I don't need to take more, just more. We're fighting to never forget that every yid, whether we look different or the same, it's all narishkeit. Every single yid is a part of me. I can never get on a boat and sail to sunset because my kids are okay and lock the door and know that there's a yid behind me that's not going to be okay. That's what we're fighting for. You know what Tomche Shabbos stands for in every neighborhood? And in this neighborhood, it's Tomche Shabbos Partners. You know what it stands for? The organization that says, we cry for each other. We cry for each other. There isn't a yid out there, and we sit and we pack and we'll give and we cry. And when we, as a kehillah, support them to go show people behind the door that no kid sits and goes, can I eat dinner tonight? In 2014, there should be a Jewish kid that asked, can I eat dinner tonight? We don't go to enough dinners for some poor little boy to not know if he's eating tonight. It's not enough. And my bracha is that if you look at a place like Tomche Shabbos, my bracha is that us as a kehillah with so much have the clarity to know who we are and what we're fighting for. And can you imagine if all of us could stand together with who we are, what we're fighting for? Maybe, just maybe, with Rav Moskowitz and Alan at the forefront, leading the way so that we never forget. Maybe, just maybe this year the Kodesh Baruch Hu will look down and go, wow, they get it. They totally get it. I get it. I'm bringing this on them because I want them to see if they're going to connect. I got all the money in the world. And my bracha to us is that just like Moshe Rabbeinu led the way, and in every generation you have people that have from the touches of Moshe Rabbeinu to care for the sheep, that we should be zeichet, all of us, to care for the sheep too. And to lead lives that Tomche Shabbos stands for. And to become the nation that never forgets who we are, what we're fighting for, so that we can keep on fighting and overcome all the obstacles to get to Yerushalayim Yireh Kodesh.